And now I'm going to show you how to stop. If we go back to the edge positions, right, we're talking about all those edges. This is where you're going to start seeing some techniques come into play with learning how to slow down and stop. You're also going to learn about speed checks as well. When you're learning to stop, a good way to practice is to, when you get comfortable doing the V-walks and you're doing all these and you're doing them really good, you're going to already be a step ahead to be able to learn how to do the stopping. So we're going to introduce doing the lemon drop stop first. Now, the lemon drop stop is basically doing the technique, the lemon drop, where you're basically making an oval shape with your body and bringing them back in and bringing them back out. So that's also doing what? You're doing the outside edges, inside edges, outside edges. So learning how to get comfortable with the edges is going to really help you be able to stop. What I'm doing is trying to create an oval shape with my mind and my legs. Now I'm already starting in this V position, so what I'm going to do, as soon as my feet start carrying out forward, I'm going to pivot my feet in. So having all these shortcuts, being able to step right and left, using all these pivots with the feet. We're going to go through pivots as well too. But as you have all these different pivots with your feet, you'll be able to see where these shortcuts come from. So what you're doing is learning how to go from the outside into the inside edges of your skate and back. Now, the immediate stop, what you want to think about is that in this oval shape, if you were cut the oval in half, the halfway point, when you're at the halfway point, when you get onto those inside edges of your frames of your skates, this is the part that slows you down. So as you are doing this technique, the halfway point is where you're going to make sure you get those inside edges. Now, depending on how fast you are going, if you're going really, really fast, or you're trying to go, you're going at a decent pace, you would hold this position a little longer, because the more that you put that weight down on here, it's kind of like a parachute. That's what slows you down. So if I was to come as fast as I could and try to slow down before the camera, I'm going to try to use this momentum to slow me down and then bring my feet in. Bringing your feet to that triangle position, that is the immediate stop. That is how you stop on the dime. Now to slow down, that is the inside edges, trying to get those flex down on the inside. So the more that you need to slow down, you can control that with that edge. Now for just getting the concept down, what you can do to practice it going forward and backwards, or just going forward at first, being able to start in this V position, that V walk. I'm going to use my thighs and my knees to start with my thighs first. I'm using my thighs to push out and my knees to kind of get that bend in. Now, if you don't put enough thrust in the beginning, it'll be hard to get that full rotation, and you want to make sure you're getting that push. You are pushing to get that through. You are pushing to put it back. Okay, so it goes from going forward, it's the thighs to the knees, to the knees to the thighs when you're doing it backwards. So if you can stand still and go forward, trying to get your feet to touch, going back, getting those feet to touch in the back. You're trying to always keep your shoulders over your skates. You're never keeping your shoulders behind your skates. You're always over your skates. So that thrust, you're pushing your knees and your thighs, will help you get that motion down. So when you get comfortable doing it, then you can kind of play with that pausing motion to see how long you can hold it and stop before you bring your feet together. So same thing when you're doing backwards. So you're learning how to use that flex and keeping your feet out to get that stop. Now, if you have skates that have a brake on them, right? If you have a skate with a brake on it, we're going to learn about how to be able to go into a staggered position, meaning whichever side your brake is on, majority of the time the brakes are on the right side. So what you would do, if your brake is on the right side and you want to practice just stopping, so what you would do is stand still, or even on a mat. What you would do is stand on the mat, and what you would do is take your right foot and you're going to take your hips and you're going to slightly push them forward into the staggered position. So my hips are straight and I'm pushing that right foot forward a little bit. Now as I put that forward foot front, this is where my imaginary brake would be at in the back. Now I'm going to learn how to slowly put all my weight on the opposite foot, my left leg, and lift up on that heel. Now, as I'm lifting on that heel, the more that I have my foot out in front, I have to have that opposite foot kind of bending down, that squatting position. Because if you stop and you're standing straight up, you can get really hurt. You want to try to use your squatting motion and that thrusting down. See how my hips are kind of over my back skate. So I'm kind of here with it. Do not be here with it. You want to have it in front. So if you notice that you're trying to stop with the brake being right next to you, you'll have a hard time doing this. You have to make sure you put that foot out in front and lift that leg up. That is a huge tip for when you're doing it with brakes. So you always remember, you're going to break it down into steps. You're going from 1 in the ready position to 2 to 3. So let me go that again. You go 1, thrust, up. And you're still squatting down. If you notice that the opposite leg will be bent, if you notice that both legs are standing straight up when you're doing it, that means you're not putting any pressure or weight down onto the skates, because that's what's going to make the brake work. It's your weight putting it down to stop. Just make sure you're very firm and when you're doing so. So if you do have the brake on your foot, remember you have to go into those steps, going from the ready position to the staggered position to lifting it up. If you can break it down like that, if you notice, if you're just going straight to it, it'll be very hard and you can get hurt doing that. You can make yourself go forward too quick. So you want to make sure you're treating it as if it was a parachute, right? You're using your brake and you're using the opposite foot kind of like where your weight's at, okay? So you're never like this. You're never going to be over it. You're going to be kind of back. So that goes 1, 2, 3. So do the opposite foot. 1, 2, 3. So the more weights you put down and you're kind of back on it, where your back hips are over your skate, at the back of your skate, that will help you get that balance there. Now, there's another way of stopping too. There's also the T-stop. The T-stop is basically the same kind of concept, except if you're going to the stagger position, you're going to use either your right or left leg that you feel the most comfortable with, and you're going to drag it sideways, meaning your hips are going to go from one position facing forward to opening up to having this foot facing in this T position. So you have to remember, as soon as you open up your hips, don't let your hips open up so much that you lose control and the other leg will come out of control. So you want to make sure when you open up that you have that foot facing sideways in that T position. So as you are stopping, you're kind of in this forward lunging position where your front knee will be kind of bent and the back leg will kind of drag behind. So you can go that starting again. You're going from 1, 2, 3, or even going 1 to 2. So you want to be able to do this comfortable, not moving first. When you're trying to do this in motion, you're trying to take your feet forward and you're moving your body sideways. But you want to stay still with your hips facing in the direction that you're doing, because you need to stop. Now, when you're doing a T-stop, remember that you are going to wear your wheels out a lot if you do that. So be very mindful that if you do T-stops, that you will start developing your flat spots on your wheels. So you want to make sure you are very, very in tune with that. So real quick, going through the ways to stop. There is the lemon drop stop, out and in, kind of using that parachute kind of technique. Also doing it backwards. You're going from the outside edges to the inside edges. That'll help you be able to slow down and bring those feet back in when you need to immediately stop. Okay? Experiment with that slowing down part. Ride out the slowing down part until you stop. Remember, if you get to a point where you feel stuck, don't forget that you can always readjust. You can always readjust. Don't forget that your skates are a part of you. You can move them. You can step around. The more that you get comfortable moving around, it'll start making sense when you go out to actually try the drills. So there is the lemon drop stop. Also, we'll talk about the hockey stop too, but when we get to those edges, being able to stop on the side, that's when you get really comfortable with being on those edges and being able to stop like that with using your hip. And then the T-stop, being able to go forward and shifting your hip and keeping that drag. Dragging your foot. The lemon drop stop, the T-stop, and the hockey stop too. That one's a little more advanced for people who have been skating for a while. You'll notice that trick is a lot easier too if you have the bigger wheel skates as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for homework, I want you to try to make sure that you're doing the lemon drop stops back and forth, being able to practice that parachute, because you want to get to the point where you're not having to use your brake on your skates. That is a point where you want to be comfortable to take that off. I want you to practice doing the lemon drop forward to getting your feet to touch, pushing them back with your knees to get to your thighs. If you need to hold onto your thighs to push, to kind of feel where you need to be at, this is a great way to practice to do that. You're keeping everything here. When you feel comfortable doing that, then try to do it with a little bit of momentum and just try to ride it out. Remember, you're not trying to get your feet to do the splits, right? You're not trying to go super far out. Always try to keep them in a controlled radius of your body. The goal for you to get comfortable at your own pace.